Welcome back. Now let us proceed with the main part of our lesson. The first issue to look into is factors to be considered when preparing for a presentation. One thing we should talk about here is that the factors you are considering when preparing, these are factors to be done by the presenter before. This is to be done before the presentation. So the presenter will be preparing for the presentation. Let us see now what the presenter should do before the presentation or when they are preparing for the presentation. Now, the factors that should be considered when you prepare for a presentation include the idea that during the preparation, the presenter should have a clear purpose and the main points of the presentation to say what is the big idea, what is the focus area of the presentation, especially when we're talking about the main points. So the presenter should have a clear purpose to say what information do they want to communicate and which key points or main points are to be presented on the day. And then another aspect they should consider when they're preparing for a presentation is that they should prepare a rough draft of the presentation, which will include an introduction, body, and conclusion. So this is again a way in which the presenter will be preparing for the presentation to say the rough draft would structure the presentation because it will talk about the introduction to say what will the presenter start with when you're looking into the introduction, and the body to say what is the main part that will be addressed in the body of the presentation, and the conclusion as well. And as we move again, another factor to be considered when preparing for a presentation is the idea that now the presenter should be fully conversant with the content or objectives of the presentation, because the presenter may not present content that they do not understand. Hence, we're talking about be fully conversant, meaning make enough research, know all the facts that relate to the presentation. And then as we move on, the presenter again should consider the time frame for the presentation. So the presenter should also look into time to say how long will they take to address or to do the presentation. And then another aspect is that before the presentation or when the presenter is preparing, remember to prepare has to do with now making sure that you get ready for the presentation. So hence now they will also have to rehearse. So the presenter has to rehearse to ensure that they have now a confident presentation on the day of the presentation. Because remember, I said these factors would occur before the presentation. As we proceed, then they have to prepare for the feedback session by anticipating possible questions. Hence, it becomes important to be fully conversant with the content of the presentation. The content has to do with what is to be presented. So hence here we say they need to be fully conversant and they need to know what is to be presented so that they are able to anticipate possible questions. Then, another aspect we look into is factors to be considered while presenting. So while now means during the presentation. Now the audience is there. Now the people are there looking to listen into the presenter. And remember, the presenter is done with the preparation process. So now we are talking about the actual day of the presentation to say which factors should now the presenter consider before they can present or during the actual presentation. Now, factors to be considered while presenting. Now look at the picture. This is during the presentation. The audience is there. Hence I said this would happen during or while the presenter is presenting. The first thing the presenter should do when they're presenting is that they should establish credibility by introducing themselves as the presenter at the start of the presentation. So they need to establish credibility by introducing themselves as the presenter at the start. So credibility would have to do with sharing maybe their experiences and sharing maybe the position they are having or they are holding in their workplace, so that they establish credibility and trust, so that the audience can also trust them. And then they should also show the most important information first, so that they don't lose attention of the audience. And then another aspect they should consider while presenting is that they should make the purpose of the presentation clear at the start of the presentation, to say the aim of this presentation is to communicate so and so information. And then another aspect they should consider during the presentation while the audience is there is that they should involve the audience with the variety of methods, maybe playing a video, maybe asking questions, so that they do not lose the attention of the audience. Remember, we said if you do not engage with the audience, you will lose attention of your audience when we started our lesson. So as we move further, another aspect to be considered while presenting is that now the presenter should maintain eye contact with the audience, so that the audience would see that the presenter is engaging with them. And then the presenter should further be audible to all listeners or the audience, meaning when we're talking about audible is that the presenter should be clear and the presenter should be speaking loud enough so that everyone can hear what the presenter is saying. And then they should make the presentation interesting with the use of visual aids, meaning the use of pictures, the use of videos, the use of audios, so that they engage with the audience or the people at the presentation. And then they should also manage their time effectively to allow time for questions, so that they can deal with questions having enough time. Because sometimes as a presenter, you know that you'll be having limited times in terms of the venue. So those are factors to be considered while presenting, or those are factors to be considered by the presenter while they present. So with that being said, let us take a short break and we will continue to sum it up.